All right. Economic weaknesses. I apologize for my shirt. I know it looks weird on the video. So, as we moved into the 1920s, some of the traditional industries are in decline. One industry that is starting to struggle is the railroad industry. Railroad stocks had been overvalued. And we talked about all the regulation during the Progressive era, actually starting back with the Populists. That regulation tends to favor the consumer. And some of the railroads are being poorly run. And with the growth of our network of roads and highways, the railroads now have direct competition with American trucking companies. The coal industry is another industry that was extremely profitable, but by the 1920s is starting to struggle. And that has a lot to do with competition. Coal is starting to have to compete with oil and natural gas as power supplies. Iron, another old industry, starting to struggle by the 1920s, again because of competition. They're having to compete with stronger metals like steel and with lighter metals like aluminum. There are more options now for construction and other uses of metal. And one of the oldest industries in America, cotton textiles, is declining from competition with synthetics. Synthetic fabrics and materials are presenting direct competition to the cotton industry. As a result, we see mills in New England close. We see some mills move south for cheaper labor. And what this does is leaves workers without jobs and forcing them to maybe have to take lower paying jobs. Farming is another area that's struggling. There was a real boom for farmers during World War I. After all, American farmers were feeding the nations of the world. They were feeding the soldiers of the war. They were feeding most of Europe in addition to the United States. So when the war ends, it's obvious that farmers are not going to be doing as well. We see a major drop in farming exports due to an isolationist policy that our country follows after World War I. And by 1929, farmers are only earning half of the national average in income. Factory workers are also struggling. Factory work has become more efficient. The new jobs created in American factories are lower paying. Their service industry jobs are not doing very well. Corporate profits had doubled, but factory wages had only risen by 11%. Now, prices remained stable. This is a direct result of the Federal Reserve working to keep prices stable and prevent inflation from becoming problematic. So, workers could actually buy more for their money. What we say in economics terms is that we saw an increase in real wages. Organized labor is also struggling in the 1920s. Mass production that we're seeing in American industry requires, for the most part, unskilled labor. Now, the AFL, the nation's largest union organization, the American Federation of Labor, is not interested in unskilled labor. They do not recruit unskilled labor. And in the 1920s, well, actually, starting in 1919, there are some radical strikes, and it allows management of factories and industry to portray unions as radical after those strikes. The courts help management by using injunctions to stop strikes. These are court orders for workers to go back to work or be arrested. They have workers sign yellow dog contracts, which state that you cannot join a union if you're going to have a job in the factory. And they also have what we call open shops, which means that factories do not have to hire union workers. And what this means is that union or workers cannot collectively bargain. The owner can work out a contract for each individual worker and take advantage of some. Management wooed or courted workers by improving plant conditions, by offering pensions and paid vacations and building better cafeterias. In other words, a lot of the things that unions might have fought for people, owners were providing to people in their factories. And as a result, union membership falls in the 1920s. We have the same number of workers. The number of workers remains constant, but the number of people who are actually in a union declines. African Americans migrated north during World War I because that's where the jobs were during World War I. Most of them are working in low-paying jobs in the service industry. Now, this is better than living in the rural South and working someone else's land. And that migration continues. The black population of America continues to migrate to the north in significant numbers. For the middle and upper class, these are the people who might have called the 20s the Roaring 20s. They're the ones going to be reaping the rewards of the Second Industrial Revolution. They might be managers, they might be engineers, they might be bankers or executives. These are the people that are investing in the stock market. After all, stock profits rose 65% compared to the average of 11%. These are the people saving money. Their bank accounts rose significantly. And these are the people, the middle and upper class, who bought houses in the suburbs and bought new cars more often. Eventually, their disposable income exceeded their wants. In other words, they had bought just about everything they wanted. So they have extra money. And what do you do with extra money? You invest it. And many people, a lot more than normal, start turning to stocks and engaging in stock speculation, buying stocks because you think they're going to improve in value. So, the long-term effects of the 1920 economy. We have some positives. We have the growth of consumer industries. We have a higher standard of living. And we have the modern American life with automobiles and skyscrapers and shopping centers and suburbs and electricity really starting to emerge in the 1920s. On the downside, we have a growing unequal distribution of wealth. Consumer debt is growing. People are buying more and more on credit. Eventually, we're going to reach a saturation of the markets for goods like appliances and cars. Eventually, everybody who can afford one and wants one has one. And eventually, that stock speculation, that rampant stock speculation, is going to prove problematic as well.